Hello, everyone. Welcome to the seventh edition of our Sociate Live Q&A event. Very happy to have all of you here joining us, but also very happy to have Castleigh Johnson, Stern Alum, joining us. I've been going back and forth with Castleigh for the last few weeks. I'm happy I was able to convince him to come and speak to us today. It's a Tuesday evening, afternoon, or 5 o'clock. I'm sure this will be a great event. We have a great set of questions to start with, and then obviously we'll open up to all questions that you guys have. Castleigh, I think we can probably start off with maybe a brief introduction. Maybe I think your background. Okay.
Oh, you're disappearing into the arch.
You're appearing in and out to make sure that you are there.
All right, now I got to take this background off. See, when you're doing too much.
Your perfect background, as it is, the natural background, I mean. So I'll let Castleigh introduce himself, maybe give a little bit of a brief background of, your kind of your, where you're from, where you're based right now, your overall kind of journey, just starting with, and then I know Marcy has a few more questions to kick it off, but Castleigh, welcome to the Sociate Q&A.
Again, thank you, Randy, and thank you, Marcy and team. Thank you for everyone to join us. Again, it is a Tuesday, probably after your classes, super tired, super busy. Did the MBA program myself a few years ago. Won't age myself, but a few years ago. So I know the kind of grind that you guys are in, so appreciate you taking the time to catch up with us today. I actually didn't even think I was going to ever be on the startup side. To be funny. So then went to Stern, did the finance thing, thought I was going to be in investment banking, PE, all that VC stuff. And technically I'm on the other side of the VC life. But my background, Castleigh Johnson, MBA in finance and accounting from Stern. After Stern, went to work for the New York Fed, interned actually at JP Morgan in investment banking in the summer of 2007. Now you can kind of age me. So right before the financial crisis, and really got to see kind of how a lot of the things that started, again, when you think about unsecured debt, MBS, CDS, CLOs, that put in a lot of pressure on financial markets, as well as the economy overall. Again, went to work for the New York Fed, so worked on a bunch of different special projects while I was at the Fed. So really got to know how banking works at a granular level. And that, again, helped me to even get to where I am now with my current startup. But at the Fed, left the Fed, went to GS, worked at Goldman in senior bank debt, Ernst & Young, AIG, Bank of Montreal, in a couple of different capacities, mostly in the risk space. So operational risk, model governance, enterprise risk, credit risk, a lot of risk. And, again, still had a passion for just making financial services more equitable. So last year, everybody kind of started talking about financial inclusion. It became sexy for a second. But finances is supposed to be equitable. And, unfortunately, based on kind of how the history of how finances actually played out in this country, it's not. And so those are some things that I'm super passionate about. That's what led me to create my startup, to address some of those gaps. So really realigning incentives and creating opportunities to make the pie bigger, so to say. And then again, with making the pie bigger, making it easier for more folks to be able to get access to that platform. So that's a little bit about me. Marcy's going to go into the.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I mean, you've done a lot. So we probably can't dive in too much into every step along the way, but I'm sure people are most interested to hear about what's going on now. If you could tell us a little bit about MyHomePathway more specifically, how, where you are in the journey with your company, what you're looking to do, and where your areas of focus on now, and maybe talk about some of the people or groups that you're partnering with as well. I know that's kind of a multi-part thing, so feel free to answer any or some of it, just not none of it.
I'm going to try to remember all of the different subcategories, and I'm going to try to hit them all coming down. So MyHomePathway, you can think of us as path to the Apple Card for mortgages. So for some of you guys who haven't really seen a path to the Apple Card program, if you apply to the Apple credit card, for example, and your profile is too risky or your credit score is too low, you'd get rejected, right? So there's certain criteria that you have to meet to get access. And so what was happening is there are too many folks that are getting turned down for this opportunity. So Apple and Marcus GS Bank came up with a platform that says, hey, if you're within striking distance, can we provide you an opportunity for us to work with you to get you to our standards, right? And so you take higher risk or unqualified folks and you build them a path to get them access. And so that helps both the consumer and the lender, right? So the consumer has access to the capital, access to the product, and the lender now has access to a consumer/revenue. And I've been telling people you could do this for 5 years. So it's actually funny that I'm glad that Apple and Marcus actually did it. So now that people won't be like, oh, I can't believe what you're trying to do. It's already in the market. So I don't have first mover advantage for that overall concept, but I have first mover advantage in the mortgage space. So in the same context, you can say there's a lot of people that apply for mortgages in the US that get turned down. And there wasn't a platform or program, that's actually in a technology solution built to say, hey, let's work with Marcy and let's help Marcy go from higher risk or unqualified to qualified. And mortgages are the hardest underwritten product in the consumer space. And so how do you take people that wouldn't have access, and then from a lender standpoint, you wouldn't have provided that person an opportunity to get there and kind of match those two incentives up. So that's literally what we do at a high level. And again, we partner with lenders and create kind of a pathway for the lenders to give people an opportunity to opt in. And once they opt in, they can work with us. We work with those lenders. We work with the consumer, get them to meet the lenders' standards, and then we send them back to the lenders. So again, it's a win-win on both sides. In terms of where we are, we launched our MVP in April. We're getting some really good traction. We have some of the largest fintech partners that are actually in the country. So you can look at Self-Lender, Isuzu Rent, Insurify, Lemonade, I'm forgetting some. And then we actually signed with a $150 billion bank. First Republic is actually our first bank partner. And we have quite a few negotiations going on with some of the largest other bank partners that are out there. Can't quite say their names yet until I sign some paperwork. That's another thing you'll learn in this game. Don't use people's names unless you sign paperwork, because they'll get offended. And yeah, just in the early stages of looking for really quality team members as well, technical folks, marketing folks, any people with backgrounds in real estate, mortgage, compliance, or ops. Again, if you think of what we're building as a pretty complex platform that we sit in the middle of housing, credit, banking, but we kind of avoid all of those. We just sit really close to all of that. So either way, we have to build a platform that, super secure. Again, we have access to people's PII, personal identifiable information, and credit report information. So we have to build our platform and be very cognizant of security, be very cognizant of the user experience, because there's also a behavioral finance aspect to this, so a psychological component. So it's not just fixing your risk profile on paper, actually also have to make you smarter at the same time. So it's, how do I educate you, make finance simple, make it bite-sized, and also help you to continue to make better decisions. So if you think about, not knowing certain information, then you know it, then what do you do when you know it? Do you automatically make better decisions? Not all the time, but it at least puts you on that roadmap to making better decisions. So if you think about a decision swing, you'd have optimal, semi-optimal, and suboptimal decision making. Without information, almost all your decisions will be suboptimal or semi-optimal. So how do we get as many people to semi and optimal as much as possible? And so that's really the goal, is to create kind of a pathway and a decisioning process, but as well as a super tactical process. Trying to close up about $1 million in funding right now, and quite a few. We just got into 2 accelerators, so that's also time consuming, exciting, and super exciting. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're a busy guy, Castleigh. We really appreciate the fact that you've been able to make the time, given that you've got so many different things going on right now across the board. You're kind of juggling a lot. you touched upon a couple of things. We've already started to get some questions in the chat, so I'm actually going to get to them fairly soon. I just wanted to mention a couple of things and then hop into some questions, and then we can pop back out to some of mine. But two things. So one is you already referenced, I was going to usually save this for later on, but you already referenced the fact that you're looking to fill, certain roles on your team. So you and I have chatted already. So I know that in addition to a couple of things that you mentioned, more specifically, I think one of the biggest things you're looking for right now is a CTO, right? A chief technology officer. Can you talk a little bit, just in case anybody on this call or somebody they might know in their network might possibly ever be interested in, this? Just very quickly, like what type of kind of skill set are you looking for a potential partner in this role?
Yeah, so CTO side that we're looking for someone obviously with hopefully some financial services experience, and someone that has mobile app development, enterprise level development skills as well. So obviously API knowledge, because we're integrating with, again, so back to some of our vendors or partners, Plaid. So we're pulling bank information from Plaid. We're pulling credit report information from CRS, which is actually Equifax. And we'll be extending that to the other bureaus as well. So a knowledge of, API interactions, authentication processes, security, microservices. So again, someone that has pretty good architectural background as well. So able to lay out systems, lay out applications, and, work with an evolving environment. Because again, in the startup space, again, unlike, typical corporate, we're going to work with some partners. Like, again, I'm going to throw out names this time, but these are hypotheticals. Just pause. Bank of America, JPM, Wells, et cetera, Redfin. And they may have specific requirements that we need to adjust to that may plug into their API structure, right? For their loan monitoring systems or their pre-approval systems. So there's going to be some flexibility in terms of how we integrate with some of these partners. But again, someone who's super smart, passionate about this area. I've worked with smart assholes before. So hopefully this is, I could take that with a grain of salt. I'm trying not to recruit and work with smart assholes anymore, just because it makes the environment a little bit more tricky, to say the least. So I would love to work with people that are just super smart, that again, we can work in a very, I would say jovial, but in a camaraderie together with the vision, because there's, in this startup space, similar to like investment banking consulting, actually, you'll put in 80, 90 hours sometimes in a week. So you want to be able to be around folks that you can build with and you enjoy being around. Even though a lot of it is virtual, like still 90% of stuff, 95% of stuff is virtual right now. Eventually when we do get into, meetings, being around each other, we want to make sure that that person, again, they like being around me. Unfortunately, right. I'm part of the company, so.
I feel like culture is so big everywhere, but especially when you're, in the startup mode, in growth mode, and you guys are going to have to be working together all the time. And I think you and I talked about, and even if you sign up for, XYZ role, you're going to have to wear several different hats over the course of the next 6 months to a year. It's not really, I may call you CTO or I may call you so on and so forth, but you're really going to have to be flexible in terms of what you're willing to take on and get your hands dirty with. And I think that that's probably pretty common across most startups. So I think it's worth mentioning, again and again.
I think also it's, don't get caught up in titles, because I'm like chief janitor. That literally is my title. Like if stuff needs to get done,
there's a mess, you clean it up.
Again, my role is to minimize problems every day.
Yeah.
And so no matter what it is, if it's, we tweeted something incorrectly and we got to get in there and clean it up, or, we sent in a proposal that had some errors on it. I have to make sure we I am the one that goes out and reaches out to those organizations or those individuals that we did that to, and make sure that we represent ourselves in the best way. So again, if the development guys do something that isn't perfect or runs causes some issues, the buck stops with me. So there's a flexibility. So again, as you're saying, somebody may come in as a VP of technology and be CTO in 6 months, or head data scientist and be working on some machine learning algorithm, even though machine learning is far from where we are right now. But the flexibility in roles, you might come in marketing and be in customer experience in 6 months, or in operations, right? If that's the need, as well as your desire. I think it's never going to be like, hey, we're going to try to just put you someplace. It's where do you want to go? And do we have that opportunity within what we're doing, growing super fast, to help you to expand in that area, right? If that's something that you want to try. Hi, Chase. And again, working from home, right? These are beautiful parts. I am interview, Chase. Interview. Yes.
This is the best.
This.
Hello.
Are those our friends?
Yes, they are my friends.
What's your friend's name?
Marcy.
Marcy.
Can you wave?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
You have no idea how many times that has happened in a VC pitch or any other conversation. So
I feel like if people can't roll with it in COVID in a pandemic times, then after all this, then they're the problem, not you. Actually, I was thinking, just looking at the fact that we've got some questions rolling into the chat. Are you cool if I'm going to save a few more of my questions for the end, like more of the big picture stuff for you, and dig into what some of the guests our attendees have asked too. So maybe we could dig into that. So Daniel, you feel free to go up first if you want to reread your question. Castleigh, I don't know if you had a chance to see it in the chat, but Daniel had a question about funding and some priorities.
Not yet.
Oh boy. We'll give him one
Yeah.
second to.
Thank you so much. No worries. This is by far the most.
my negotiation skills are better with VCs than they are with my son. Trust me.
We believe you. You've already secured a lot of funding and a lot of interested parties. But yeah, so Daniel, if you want to just ask your question again, and we'll let you kick things off.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, Castleigh. I suppose this question is somewhat answered by you describing a little bit of your background. But my biggest question is how have you found finding partners and then initial seed funding? Because I find that it's often, you need funding to find partners, and sometimes you need partners to find funding. And so what has the process been like for you? Do you have any recommendations for someone who's kind of in a similar boat and starting out? I'm sure you probably leveraged somewhat of your connections with your work experience and stuff like that, but I'm interested in hearing more about that aspect of your story.
Dude, it is how do I say this? It's the ultimate catch-22, right? So the catch-22 is like VCs are like, hey, do you have all of this traction, all these partners, all this stuff that makes us excited, right? Because they're looking at from a de-risking. All a VC cares about are two things: de-risking and $1 billion. That's all they care about. I don't care what else they tell you. Social impact is sexy. That's cute for the moment. Environmental cleanup is sexy. It's cute for the moment. They're herd followers, all of them. So this is recorded, but this truly is kind of the game. So it is a little bit of a game. I mean, there are some true folks, and again, this is a generalization, extreme generalization, but there are some people that are truly passionate about, clean tech, ed tech, fintech in the specific areas, but in general, it's going to be like, hey, how does Daniel make me think that you can execute on this thing better than the next 1,000 people that are coming after you, right? Because in any market, no matter what market it is, there's going to be at least 1,000 to 10,000 to 20,000 or more coming after that market if it has any viability, right? So what they're looking at, can they bet their money on Daniel and the team to outcompete everybody else that's coming down the pipeline, right? You have to convince them of that. And so how do you convince them of that? One, is the market big? Hey, can I eventually print $1 billion from this market? Yes, the market's big enough. Then do you have the skill set that can actually deliver on a solution? Do you have an experience, delivers on a solution that fits something unique within that market to deliver some value? Because it's going to be value extraction in terms of revenue, right? So what's the value that you bring that then you can extract some revenue stream from with that value, right? And in that case, you might have a certain skill set. Do you have teams, advisors, relationships, et cetera, that also add to that value, right? And so it's really de-risking from their standpoint. Now, on the partner standpoint, it's funny you mentioned that. The other catch-22, I had this huge bank that were like, hey, you need to have 10 million in the bank before we'll partner with you. It's like, but if you partner with me before I can get the 10 million. So it's kind of weird that you're saying that, but it's okay. End of the day, it was just another excuse that that bank had, personally. So you kind of have to look at the excuses that people give you, and some of it's rational and some of it's bullshit, and just filter through the bullshit and save your time, because you want to be able to get to a lot of no's quickly versus the ones that kind of drag their feet and keep you engaged for like 6 months, 3 to 6 months. If somebody believes in you and believes in what you're doing, they'll have conviction within a month, less than that. They'll typically have a conviction within like 2 weeks once they have to do it, their own little due diligence. But a lot of the folks are like, hey, if you had this, I'd believe in you. If you had that, tone that shit out. It's a waste of your time, right? Because they're just looking for a different excuse to tell you no eventually. So just kind of get to the folks that truly believe in you as a team, as an individual, in what you're going after in the market, if they have some experience, et cetera. And then for me, I literally just hit the ground with a bunch of things and did like this. So I had a ton of relationships in banking, leveraged some of those. Got into some, accelerator programs, incubator programs, Stern, connected with the Berkeley Center, connected with University of Chicago's Polsky Center, got into EAN, Ernst & Young's network program, got into Rutgers Black and Latino pre-accelerator, got into Antler. So for me, it's like, at the end of the day, they're credibility markers for these folks, right? How do you add as many credibility markers that they say, Daniel, he's got something. His team's got something. And, these other folks have kind of co-signed him. Not to say like, hey, they've said Daniel's the best person in the world, but it added a little bit of credibility marker. Because at the end of the day, you ever heard of this phrase, nobody got fired from investing in IBM back in the day? It was like this real old phrase that people used to say for money managers, right? Blue chip stocks. If you bought blue chip stocks, you just sat there, you de-risk it, right? So they want to be able to de-risk investing in you. And so you got to kind of do as many of those things. And again, those things also kind of get to the ability to leverage capital and to gain capital and to gain partnerships, right? I'll tell you the trick for us was we got a Forbes article written and people jumped out the woodworks after the Forbes article, right? And, folks are like, oh, you got to pay $3,000, $5,000 to get featured in Forbes. And I was like, I don't have that money. So that was not going to happen. But I just happened to be an Antler company, and the same writer did a feature on Antler, our VC, pre-seed VC, and Antler mentioned us as one of their companies, their kind of companies they're proud of. That same writer reached out to us like 6 weeks later. It's like, we'd like to do a feature on you. I'll take it. And, literally that led to our couple of our partnerships, our Self partnership, our Lemonade partnership. LendKey reached out to us. So, and then I had another interesting relationship with like the head of diversity and inclusion for Experian, who's the credit bureau. And he literally posted that article on LinkedIn and all his network saw it. And so because of that one post, some really senior folks all up and down banking saw that and was like, okay, this guy's.
That's the traditional network effect.
It is. I mean, and again, you can't buy that, right?
No.
And so your job is in whichever industry you want to penetrate, in whichever lane you want to go in, find some influences. Again, not the social media shit, Like, who are the influencers within? And again, not to say that social media influencers aren't great, because I'm probably going to connect with some of them on the B2C side. But in your particular lane, healthcare, ed tech, whatever that is, are there some people that have, reach? And they may not have all of the reach in your particular industry, but just enough to add some additional credibility to you, because that's really what you want to end up doing. And then that kind of builds some momentum, and then you roll with that momentum until you truly pick up like a ball rolling downhill.
So Castleigh, thank you. I think we could probably, I know this is a topic you're super passionate about, so I'm actually glad it was one of the first questions we kind of had out there. But I think switching gears a little bit, and I'm not surprised that this is kind of one of our first questions asked as well. I thought maybe Teddy could kind of ask his question again about the balance between social focus and social responsibility versus business incentives, because that's an interesting one. And I'm sure there's many people kind of wondering, how do you strike the right balance there? So Teddy, I probably butchered your question, so go for it.
You definitely captured the sentiment of it, which is probably most important, which is, yes, exactly. Castleigh, how do you manage like an initial, like, I think it's like you said, it's really sexy at the upfront when you're raising money, talking about the social impact. And like, there's a wonderful financial argument here for like doing this and growing people and getting them to homes. But long term, given your conviction, like, how are you balancing the importance of like that social mission with, the opportunity, this opportunity?
So for me, I'm super focused on social impact, right? That's why I get up every day and I'll work 16, 15 hours, right? But what I also have to understand is the folks I may partner with, whether it's at a strategic partnership level, a lender level, a VC level, may not have the same goal, right? I don't want you to have an opposite goal. It can't be, again, totally opposite from mine, but it may not be what your sole focus is, right? So I have to understand the incentives of the partners that I work with, right? What's your incentives? If I partner with the head of mortgage for this bank, their two main incentives, and because of how their compensation is structured, revenue and risk, right? Understand the incentives of the people that you want to partner with, or whether our other partners, whether it's self-lenders, Susu, LendKey, et cetera, they have their own internal drivers, right? But those internal drivers do something for our customers and my end impact, right? So that's what I pick. And I talk to a lot of these senior executives before I even get into any type of partnerships with them. But again, my goal is social impact and actually making the pie bigger and crushing the wealth gap and crushing home ownership gap, right? To be honest, I don't even care if the head of Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or whatever wants to do it. What I care about is I'm gonna leverage your balance sheet, right? You're gonna get revenue. We're gonna bring folks back to you where you can't say no. I'm gonna put you in a position where you can't say no, right? So it's the understanding incentives alignment, and there's some people that are gonna be totally opposite of what I want to do, right? I need to avoid that partnership, that relationship, right? That's my job. But again, they don't have to necessarily be like this. We don't have to be lockstep in terms of like, hey, you want to make roses and running through the fields and holding hands and shit. Like that's not practical, right? But I think for me, it's just, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? What am I trying to accomplish? Is there enough of an alignment in terms of how we want to be able to accomplish this, and that there's you truly want to do something that helps move what I want, but more aligned to your incentives. Your incentives, again, are revenue and risk. And because of the FRB and our Federal Reserve Bank and OCC banking regulatory frameworks, and now FHFA kind of pushing organizations to want to address this, people are now kind of want to step up their game. So that's kind of helped in terms of a focus. But again, I'm a practical person, bro. I'm a pragmatic person. Here's my thing. How do we say like, hey, I know how things work on a day-to-day basis and what really works in banking, and I'm not going to change. Again, that's the Titanic. Why I did the startup side, so I can do this. they can do this. So you can't change all of that structure overnight, but we can show that given the right alignment incentives and opportunities and processes and what we're putting together, you can get your things done and your mission accomplished and still provide that access, right? Equitably. So for us, it's really just, making sure that there's good enough alignment to what we're going to do. And part of it is like, I can convert your ass over to my side later. Results, what people care about are results, right? So if I can align and get the results that get you excited, whether you are on board 100% or just 50%, when you see the results, your ass will jump the fuck over 100%, right? My son's not around. So those are the things that I think are, critical in any way you want to go, start a business or, you're looking for inefficiencies, right? In any kind of business that you want to start. So you have to think that the incumbents in a certain place haven't, again, if they did figure those inefficiencies out, you wouldn't have an opportunity. Right. So that's the beautiful part. But then how do you, again, without almost shaming folks or turning them off, to say like, hey, we've got something that can help you, right? Especially for somebody like me who needs capital and lender leverage, right? I can't say, hey, shame on you. All you guys are terrible. Maybe you haven't done shit right in the fucking last 50 years, but still, there's an opportunity for us to do something together that addresses multiple kind of concerns, right? So I think it's just, for me, just alignment incentives. Just figure out what those incentives are, align to what I know I want to accomplish. And then again, investors care about certain else. So they only really look at like, hey, is this business model going to work? Is this thing going to do X, Y, and Z? So looking at investors cares about this, bankers care about this, I care about this. How do we kind of all align? It's almost like this mishmash of, incentives. How do we align all of those incentives together? Because not all bankers are going to care exactly about the same thing. In certain circumstances, they will. Same thing with me. Same thing with, invest with VCs. So, and there's different types of VC investors, right? So the same way there's different types of lenders, whether it's traditional big bank, non-bank lenders, community organizations, CDFIs, community development, financial institutions. So those incentives are where you really got to spend some time in aligning and creating that initial traction with folks that is close to your incentives. Because once you have to change somebody's incentives, it takes time just to do that, right? So the most you can do is find as close as you can get to that incentive, and then really go to the races.
Thank you. I think now, and this is great because I told you, Castleigh, in advance, we've probably hit like a bunch of different topics. So I'm happy to see that is true. So Sarah, you had a question about customer identification and acquisition and kind of everything that goes along with that. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit before Castleigh jumps in and answers it.
Yeah, thank you, Castleigh. As you know, we said before, I'm a Rutgers Business School student, but I'm actually an NYU alum too. So, what's that?
So let's get this. I did Rutgers BLT program, so I'm shouting out to Rutgers too. I got love for them as well.
They're great. I love both. So my question is a marketing related question. So how do you identify customers that are within this striking distance that you're talking about? And then it seems to me like the customers that would most benefit from your product might be the least aware. So how do you promote your product and build awareness?
I like you, Sarah. We're gonna do some things together. So a couple of different pieces. One, the folks that are within striking distance, the way we're running our partnerships are we're creating those strategic partnerships with the lenders. So when you get rejected, those folks will now be made aware that, hey, there's an opportunity for you to go partner with MyHomePathway for us to help you, understand where you are, give you an assessment, and then build you on that path. So the customer acquisition channel, you're going down that version, is truly our lenders. But then that's only one of the acquisition paths. So I have this really kind of convoluted acquisition structure map. Oh, don't even want to show it because it'll kind of confuse the conversation. But there's a few different acquisition paths that we have. For example, you have the D2C, direct to consumer play as well, where people haven't even been rejected yet. And there's what Fannie and Freddie consider lifetime renters, that people that are even scared to apply because they don't think they would even qualify. So the lifetime renters are the ones you're kind of referring to on the back end basis. So I'll get back to that. How do we even let people know that that 20% down is a myth, but that you still want to put people in a place where they have a 700 credit score? Why 700 credit score? Because 700 is a prime credit score in the US, right? Because delinquency rates, access to capital, cost of capital, all of that's much better at prime than it is at even near subprime or subprime. So we want to take people to a place where your access is much more equitable and easier. And so those are the folks that as you say, may not know that's even a possibility to them. So how do we create lanes for those lifetime renters, those people that may not be aware that there is an opportunity for them to become homeowners? We haven't quite figured that out yet. So we have an opportunity to actually crack that nut. And again, that's one of the things that we're looking for still. But we're refining our message and working through other channel partners. For example, one of our other channel partners is Habitat for Humanity. We're running a pilot with them because, again, they may get 1,000 applications for people in each of their local affiliates, and they only have 20 homes. So what do you do with the other 980 people, give or take, right? So we want to create opportunities to say, hey, work with us. We have other relationships with lenders that have these lower moderate income tract loans, LMI loans, that typically would go to Black and brown consumers that don't even know about them. And so there's a lot of confusion. Information asymmetry is actually an interesting battle that we got to get over. So how do we take all of this complicated stuff in finance, make it super accessible, easy to digest, aware for most people? Then the other part that makes it a little bit more delicate as well is because where we sit close to housing and credit. There's a lot of discriminatory advertising and things that we can do from a targeting perspective, which is where it would be beneficial. So on the marketing side, cut out 80% of the stuff they're going to teach you in Rutgers for what we would do, because we're super limited because we can't geo-target, we can't target to certain demographic profiles that you would be able to do for a lot of other things, right? So you have to be super creative in terms of how do you get the message out and how do you make it relatable. So a lot of ours is partnership strategies, right? So partnership strategies become a main source of acquisition, and then partnering with like young urban professional organizations or just any other, young alumni associations could be parts of it too. So that's one of the challenges we haven't fully locked in. We're continuing. The one part about a startup is you iterate. You try something, you learn from it, you make it better, you take in the lessons, you think of something else, you take in feedback, advice from other successful startups, other folks, and say, hey, what did you do in a similar place or in a not similar place, and even a tangential industry? So again, because of where we sit in finance, similar to kind of like healthcare to a certain extent in terms of privacy concerns, but within finance, because of discriminatory and predatory lending pieces, it's like a delicate balance that we kind of are continuously going around on the marketing side. But at the same time, there's ways that we can get around it if we get to the right folks for like Facebook, Google. There's a lot of restrictions around how you can target and how you can advertise in those ones. So those are some of the challenges we haven't quite figured out, but we'll get to it. So short of your answer, we're still working on it. And so again, a lot of it is partnership strategy to get that kind of word out, and build an interesting, almost like community-based referral feel to it. Eventually, we're still working on that. But again, the good parts about what we do is that there's a ton of work, and so there's a lot of great opportunity to think. And the one part I will also be cognizant of, I don't know all the answers. So I'm always looking for folks that are better in marketing, more strategic in certain areas that will bring good, questions, answers, things that we can try. And again, but within the context of the guidelines that we have to use. And we'll again, give it a shot.
Yeah, you can't be all things. You can't play every role possible. So I think, and knowing that and not having the ego in that sense is probably going to play to your benefit immensely and make you more successful in the long term. I think we have at least one more question in the chat, and then if we have some time, I'll pop back into a couple of my questions, or everybody feel free. If there's a second question, there's no one question per person rule. I just like to give everybody a chance first. But Courtney had kind of, which is nice, like almost a follow-on question. Sarah's question was about acquiring customers and targeting them, and Courtney's is obviously, more about, kind of the middle process, I would say, and minimizing the drop off. So again, Courtney, please feel free to do a better job than my paraphrasing, but go for it.
It's the beautiful word, the churn word.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that was great. My question just happened to kind of fall nicely into the same bucket as Sarah's in sort of the growth marketing and product design perspective. Obviously, you're going after such an important goal, and user acquisition is great, but the ultimate goal is getting people qualified for a loan for a mortgage. So how is your team thinking about like user psychology? Obviously, there's a reason that your product exists and people aren't just, left on their own to sort of figure it out, navigate this really complicated loan space. So how is your team thinking about just reducing that churn rate, retaining users, and kind of walking them with you all the way through the funnel, minimizing those drop-off rates?
Man, Sarah and Courtney, I love you guys. You guys are hitting some beautiful questions. Thank you. So that's the sweet spot, right? Is how do I take someone from, one place? Let's say you came into the platform. Our assessment was Courtney's a D+, and we're gonna get Courtney from a D to a B. What does that look like? What is that journey? How long does it take? What are the steps? Right. So it's relatively complicated, but let's simplify it as quick as we can. There's a little bit of gamification in there, right? There's a little bit of social psychology in terms of, you ever saw the weight loss app Noom, where it talks about a psychological approach to weight loss? No one's quite developed a psychological approach to financial decisioning and improving that. That's what we're building. So we want to partner with, there's a couple behavioral finance labs that are out here. Duke has one, University of Chicago has one. Ideas 42 is another one that we want to partner with. So we have a couple feelers out. I have a pretty good relationship with the Ideas 42 Behavioral Finance Lab. So I want to take some of their learnings and their processes and plug that into our app. It's not there yet. It's going to get there. But again, it's a journey, right? We're not saying we're credit repair where we can just send in a bunch of dispute letters, 30 days, you'll be looking sexy. Again, that's the biggest loser concept. How does Biggest Loser typically work? You lose 100 pounds, you gain 95 back in a year. That's not the win-win for either the consumer or the lender, right? So how do we, again, that's why the education component is critical as well, right? As we're tactically improving your risk profile and what you look like in terms of helping you to increase your credit scores, that reduces your cost of capital, that reduces your debt to income ratio, that improves your cash flow, that improves your savings. All of this stuff on a paper standpoint makes you look better, right? So I can tactically help you do some of this stuff, right? With our recommendations, with our partnerships. That's why I have those partnerships. Back to Teddy's question. Those organizations that all the folks I mentioned help to do something specific for one of our users, and say, Courtney may not need all of the partnerships that we have or be able to get to. Maybe you need 2 or 1. Right? Or Courtney may need to do something specifically herself, like your credit utilization. What would happen there is that we're going to take some of your cash flow, if you have it, or help you create additional cash flow that can be then redirected to paying down your credit utilization, right? But in the same time, I have to educate you as to why that credit utilization is important, why fixed interest rates are different than variable interest rates, what are closing costs? Because everybody hears about down payment, don't even think about closing costs, right? So what does that look like? What's that process? Earnest money, appraisals, why are they important? going in from an origination standpoint, or in a year or 2 years or 5 years, right? That's how you build equity. And so I have to educate you to understand what is $250 per square foot to give me my $400,000 on my house value, right? And my bank note is $350. So I got $50K in equity, right? Those are some of the simple things that I need to be able to teach you so you understand what you're getting into, or replacement costs, right? So in that same context, I have to tell you, hey, if you're thinking about buying a $500,000 house with a 20-year-old roof, you're probably going to replace that roof within the next 5 years, or buy a $500,000 house with a 5-year roof. Why? Gives you another 20 years, right? I don't have to rush to replace that roof for another $25,000 to $30,000 that I'm not necessarily thinking about, right? So all of those things, right, from an educational standpoint, are things we need to get you to understand. Remember I talked about that suboptimal, optimal decision-making thing? I have to get you there. So in that same context, right, but I still have to almost make it super simple and gamify it, give you external incentives to a certain extent. So we have our partnerships with, Lemonade and Surefine and LendKey. I can raffle off renter's insurance as an incentive.
Yeah.
Why is that? Right? What just happened in Ida? And people don't think about that on a regular basis. And the reason why I even was super conscious of renter's insurance, because one of my classmates at Stern, the apartment above him flooded. And it flooded his apartment. And he didn't have renter's insurance. And his landlord was taken care of. But then he had to replace everything in his apartment out of pocket on them credit cards while you're at Stern. So you're taking out additional student loans to go replace all your stuff, right? And then other folks, we started having this conversation like, who had renter's insurance? Fuck if I knew, I didn't have it. But eventually, again, it's a $10 to $15 cost. Understand the concept of self-insurance, right? How do you teach someone the concept of self-insurance? It's not one of those things that's sexy, right? That's thought of. But if there's any one large out-of-pocket item that could potentially hit you and you don't actually have that capital set aside, regardless, that's effective self-insurance. And so how do I reduce that potential for offset of capital expenditure? That's a basic concept of insurance, right? Is risk offset. What's the out of pocket for me today to offset a potential risk in any point in the future?
And it sounds like, Castleigh, the more that you, and the more ways and in which you educate your current customers, that will directly lead to, I guess, less churn. It sounds like it's the education component that probably plays the greatest role in this. It's not like, oh, you're probably going to lose, or you're losing your customers to somebody else who does something similar. It's, if they don't understand it with you, they're not going to go somewhere else and use a similar competing product. So I do think your emphasis on education coupled with the psychology makes the most sense to kind of avoid this churn. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I think, again, we're always working to, make it better, because it's not anywhere near where we want it now, even at the finished product. Again, MVP is literally minimal viable product, early beta out. So from what we consider full product, we're still probably a minimum a year out from a real full.
Okay, I was going to ask you that later. Okay.
Yeah, the robustness of our full context, because again, we still haven't even embedded all of our strategic partnerships in our app as yet, or certain other large organizations that we have on deck. Can't wait to sign them. That we'll put in there as well. But again, from a psychological component, right? How do I put Courtney? There's a natural linguistic side coming in eventually. So if you think about recommendations, right? We all read and write in a certain way. How do I take the same reco that I would give to Sarah or Ted or Courtney and give it to you in a way that you process it better because of how you typically engage in information? Because this is the same steps. I could tell you the same exact thing, but how you would like it to be said to you, same way like how we communicate, right? There's a way within that that we want to eventually put into our app that we haven't yet. And again, little social recognition, little gamification, little milestone tracking. Again, decision reinforcements. There's a 5 steps of change process, right? So if I got to take and break a bad habit, it usually takes some time to break a bad habit. Then there's putting in the new habit, and there's reinforcing that new habit, right? So those are just, again, a component. That's why I'm not even worried about, to be a certain extent, and to almost go back to your question, Daniel, in terms of competition, to a little bit, I don't give a fuck about any other body. Because nobody's going to do what I'm going to do. Because the context of the granularity that I'm putting into our platform, folks have had 10 years to try it. But everybody's focused on origination, the next product sold. That's not really my goal. My goal is different. I want to make a bunch of people super smart, right? Here's the ironic part, and I'm glad this is being recorded. You don't even have to get a home. I want to put you in the option to say no.
Right.
Great.
No. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I did see we didn't quite get to Katie's question, but I think we can probably quickly touch on that since you, her question was if TikTok is a part of your marketing strategy. And I think the question is probably more, will it be part of your strategy once you're kind of knee deep in the social media campaigns that you'll be running? Is it too soon to know right now? Do you have an answer for that?
We don't. So I'll answer that super quickly. Sorry for being so long on my answers.
No, that's okay. No. If we had had more questions, I would have cut you off. But no, I only have a couple quick things on my end. So no, I appreciate you. Your people are, as I'm sure they've noticed, they're getting very real, unfiltered, candid answers from you. And I think they probably appreciate that more than a canned, 3-sentence or 1-minute response. So no worries at all.
Yeah, canned is not the best for me. TikTok is not part of our strategy yet. I'll be honest, most of the folks that talk anything finance on TikTok are bullshitters. Like, I eat them for lunch, but I just don't feel like it. And they don't know shit about actual finance. And so that's the sad part about it. But it's like the cute, entertaining, kind of like fluffy shit that gets pub and like blows up. And like, dude, do not do that. You will put yourself in a shitty spot. So I'm not necessarily a TikTok person. Again, my candor doesn't fit on TikTok. So this is why I can't do it. And I haven't found quite the folks on our team or within, our marketing outreach that can fit that strategy. But I know there is a place for TikTok with us. I just don't know exactly how that's going to fit yet. Again, because I can't do it. I'm a little bit too straightforward and blunt. But yeah, long story short, yes, it will be there. Who knows what TikTok is going to look like in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? But again, I've kind of perused a little bit of the stuff that's kind of cute in finance and TikTok. And I was like, no, do not set yourself up for failure.
Well, at least you know what you don't want to do. So that's equally as important. I think I'll just ask you one quick closing question. And for this one, I will ask you to just kind of rattle off, not bullets, but I think we talked about this before. So we always like to end either the prepared Q&A or the Q&A overall with advice. So you've got a lot of gems, but if you had to kind of, summarize it or synthesize it down to like a few different points, what advice would you give to other either MBA students or entrepreneurs exploring opportunities in fintech, or just really exploring opportunities to start their own business altogether? And what resources would you recommend?
So I would say, obviously, the Berkeley Center, the NYU Entrepreneurial Center at Stern. I'm sure a lot of other programs. Rutgers has a really good entrepreneurial center as well. Other schools have their entrepreneurial centers. Look there. I actually didn't think I was going to do the startup thing, so I actually didn't leverage Berkeley while I was at Stern. But try to tap into those resources. Build your network as much as you can within a depth and breadth. So again, if you're going to be in finance, marketing, ops, try to get as connected with as many people, because those are going to be part of people that you want to get either feedback from, advice, potentially work with co-founders, consultants, etc. Because again, a company's a collection of a bunch of different shit that needs to get done, right? So you think about that. You're going to need legal advice. You're going to need compliance, potentially, marketing. And so you want to be able to kind of broaden your network as much as possible, because those are the folks that will definitely help you and provide you. Sometimes people help you stop jumping off a cliff, right? Because, hey, this is a terrible idea. Learn that early, right? So as soon as you can, to minimize the stuff that isn't really going to work, try to do as much feedback, market research, etc. Again, build dope advisors. So folks that, have had experience in a particular, in the startup space, and especially if you're going in the startup space, connect with folks that are either, VCs that have been operators at startups. The network is super important in the startup space, because like one person can introduce you to 10, 15 huge organizations or opportunities that are out there. Because again, a few folks introduced me to a lot of the partners that we were able to sign, Self and others, just because I've developed a relationship with them. So I would definitely spend some time, build a dope advisory board, whether they're your official board members eventually as you build your company, but you want personal advisors as well as company business advisors. Some people will help you to kind of guide you in that path, because there'll be a lot of up and downs. And so you want those folks that you can be open with, truly share, that, have your best interests at heart. And so you really want those folks that, you can build solid relationships with, that give you good advice. And it's not always the advice that you want to hear, but if it's somebody that you believe truly cares about you, and has the experience and have seen some things and been through some wars, then you want to be able to take that advice and leverage it well. And again, from a VC funding standpoint, create partnerships and organizations that, have the ability to kind of introduce you into those places as much as you can. And yeah, I think for us, just read, execute, don't take a lot of things personally. The market's going to change. Things are going to change, and try to be as even keel on the ups and the downs as possible. And that's easier said, obviously, than done. I'm kind of, again, saying that shit in jest a little bit, because some of the downtimes are going to be super down. And you can be having a super downtime in a fucking crazy week, still an 80-hour week with shit not working well. And so you got to have a little bit of resilience, actually a lot of resilience in this space. And if you can, I would definitely try to at least start with a couple co-founders if you have decent, strong relationships, because those relationships sustain you, right? Sustain you and the co-founder in the journey, because it's like a bunch of 100-yard races for 10,000 yards. Right. So you're always getting this milestone. What's the next milestone? Whether it's funding, whether it's partnerships, whether it's, customer acquisition, whether it's, minimizing churn, there's all these milestones that you guys got to hit in the build process, but it's a super long marathon. But at the same time, because of competition and, things changing, you kind of always have to move as quickly as you possibly can to get to that next milestone. So it's a little bit of a weird space in terms of moving super fast as much as you can, but knowing it's a journey at the same time.
Thank you so much, Castleigh. This was excellent. I'll let Randeep close out as well, but I just wanted to thank you also personally for taking the time, for answering everybody's questions, for being so honest. I think honest answers make for the best answers, for sure. And I think yours were, in some cases, I heard some themes from some of our other speakers that we've had before. The advisory board definitely sticks out for me. And in some cases, I think you had some really unique perspectives on things, and especially when you got into the weeds on a few of the things that you were thinking about and how you're planning to kind of grow your business as well. For anybody, I know a couple of people joined late, a couple of people dropped off, just a couple logistical things. We will probably have the recording kind of up and posted on our Sociate YouTube page by tomorrow. We're planning to send that out to all attendees, including the ones or the many people that also couldn't make it. I received some kind of last minute notifications of people who couldn't make it. So they're really looking forward to seeing this recording, Castleigh, and I'm sure it will not disappoint. And like I said, I also hope that, what I'll plan to do is also share out that rec for your CTO and any other kind of key either resources or other roles that you'd like to share. I tend to like to share that out. in the follow-up emails that I send. So I'll do that. And Randeep, I don't think we have our next event firmed up enough to kind of blast it out here now.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is going to be an event next month. Most likely there will be, most likely it could be a healthcare founder or an e-commerce. So we'll keep you guys posted. And again, thanks to Marcy and Castleigh, a lot of thanks for literally giving like a masterclass, I feel like, on entrepreneurship you gave us here. Really enjoyed this, as I did the previous 6, but this was really, really special. And I think thanks to Sarah, Teddy, Daniel, Courtney, hopefully getting all the names right, for joining, everyone else, Raghav, everyone for joining, and spread the word about Sociate, so that more of your friends can join and participate in this.
Yes, and if you're not a member, please join. We didn't require it to come be part of the platform, but to be part of the event.
Yeah.
But for one small plug, if you haven't heard, we're open to 20 or 25 of the top 25 MBA programs in the country, and when you join, it's free, first of all, and pretty painless to sign up. The nice thing is, not to mention that it's niche, unlike LinkedIn, but you're automatically connected to everybody else. So Castleigh's on there. A lot of people you see are on here, and along with the 2,500 or so other people from across these MBA programs and communities up through. We have senior alums, we have C-suite on there, we've got students, so we kind of run the whole gamut. So
you even have people who went to Shark Tank, right?
To where?
To Shark Tank and won the money, right?
Oh yes,
Yes,
we have somebody who was on Shark Tank pretty recently on there too. She did really well. So it's open. It's open to everybody as long as you're an MBA student or an alum. We don't specialize or focus on one industry or type of role or another. We kind of run the gamut. You'll find a lot of interesting people, I think, to connect with on there, and it'll certainly guarantee that if you're a member, you'll hear about our job opportunities that come out on a weekly basis. You'll hear about these events in advance. But I don't want to do more than 90 seconds of self-promotion, so I'll stop it there. But thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate it. Some of you are repeat attendees, so that's awesome. And I hope for some of you guys who it was your first time that you'll kind of stop by and drop into another event, or I'll see you on the platform soon. And Castleigh, thank you again. Good luck at all of your multiple speaking engagements for the rest of the week. I know you've got a bunch of them, so we'll let you go rest your voice, and hopefully you have as many fun interruptions in your other speaking events throughout the rest of the week, because that's awesome. And I can't wait to go rewatch that on the recording.
I am sure I will. Again, that's probably the worst I am in negotiating. So thank you.
I believe it.
I want to know what you negotiated. Ice cream? I want to know that.
Yeah, how did you get him to go back into the other room? But we'll talk about that offline. But thank you guys so much.
Now, but again, we pull it in. But again, if you guys ever want to reach out to me, you can just shoot me a quick email. It's Castleigh at MyHomePathway.
I'll share it in our follow-up, since you're okay with that.
Yep.
Your LinkedIn
so
profile.
again,